The next hero I wanted to make a guide for is Loki. And the goal here today, and why I wanted to make it, is I want to make him approachable and way easier to play for you. Really simplify the God of Mischief here. That way you know what you're doing. Loki has a very high ceiling, and there's a ton of moving parts. So importantly, I want to talk about how to play Loki, the steps you need to take, and it's a lot easier than you think. I'm going to get into the playstyle, how he heals in comparison to the other strategists, and that's a huge one actually, because people see Loki's healing numbers, think he isn't that good, but when we get into how he heals, you'll start to see how things can be skewed. Very interesting section on that later. He has clone combos, the Rune heal, how it all applies, ton of stuff. And I got a lot of examples. And the basis of this guide is that there's some core fundamentals to follow, a foundation, if you will. And if you follow them, I can all but guarantee you're going to have good games with Loki. Lots to talk about, but before we get into it, a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. HelloFresh has the most 5-star reviews among meal kit services. They have their biggest menu yet with over 50 dinner options and even more market items that suit any healthy lifestyle. Meat and veggie, fit and wholesome, pescatarian, family friendly, quick and easy 20-minute meals. They got your back. Ton of options and flexibility. Plans change, life gets busy. HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week. You're never locked into a contract. Everything can be tailored to your schedule by adjusting your delivery date or even skipping a week when you're not able to cook at home. And my favorite part of HelloFresh is learning how to cook things I've never cooked before. A quick example. These homemade soy ginger and shrimp pork wontons. How to make and cook a good wonton. I've never made them before, so they're going to teach me how to make them. I'm going to see how it's done. I'm going to make different kinds of wontons later on. Not only that, they say breakfast is the most important part of the day, and HelloFresh agrees. Right now, they're giving all subscribers free breakfast for life, and that means you can enjoy a totally free breakfast item with every single HelloFresh delivery. So thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Go to my link down below right at the top of the description, or scan the QR code at the top of the screen. Use my code CoolJan10 and receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. The link and code are valid in all countries and respective local discounts will apply. Again, that's CoolJan10. As always, these guides are for everyone, from beginner to seasoned players. The overall goal is to get better with Loki and help each other out. And I'm going to walk through his kit in a very specific order, because we're going to build as we go. We're going to set up the foundation. His primary attack is Mystical Missile. Your left click on controller, its right trigger. Fire mystical missiles to heal allies or deal damage to enemies. It's a single cast projectile with a delayed impact. Now, the projectile itself deals no damage. It cannot heal. All the damage or healing comes from the spell field, that delayed impact. It also cannot go through teammates. So if you shoot it into their back, they're going to get healed. It's not going to go through them and also deal damage to enemies on the other side. As far as damaging enemies, it does 30 damage, and that spell field is a 3-meter spherical radius. And the damage does have fall off within the spell field. It begins at half of a meter, and it deals 50% less damage at 2.5 meters. So again, all of the damage comes from this delayed impact, the splash of it. The splash has a 3-meter distance, so if you hit them directly, that's 30 damage, obviously. Right at their feet, 30 damage. But as you get further away from that on the ground, starts doing less, all the way to 2.5 meters and out, it deals half, so it'll deal 15 damage. As far as the healing, again, all healing comes from the spell field. When you're healing allies, it heals 40 hit points per cast. With healing, though, a big difference, there is no fall off. Doesn't matter if you hit them directly, it's 40 hit points. If you splash their feet right next to it, 40 hit points. If you're that full 3 meters away, if you splash them, 40 hit points no matter what. And throughout the video, you're going to see me doing that. You're going to see a lot of Loki players doing that, kind of looking at the ground. And of course, if someone's right in front of you, sure, no reason to be aiming at their feet. But with how his kit works, everything else, a lot of the time you're going to be healing at the feet level because A, it's a better chance to hit your allies. Say they move or strafe, you've hit the ground under them, you have some leeway because it splashes. B, you can hit multiple allies by hitting the ground because it splashes. And C, in team fights, you could hit multiple allies, but if there's enemies, you could be damaging them if they're close too. And again, that could be 30 damage or half to 15. It has 10 ammo. The next two abilities are the most important part of his kit aside from the ult. Doppelganger and the Regenerative Domain. First, Doppelganger. It's your E, controller, top right bumper. Project an illusion that can cast some of Loki's abilities. It's got a cast distance of 30 meters. You have 2 charges with a cooldown of 12 seconds. This is where Loki gets strong, and this is where you learn that his strength is based off of your cooldown management. Off spawn, you get the 2 charges, press the button, you can place a doppelganger. Once you place one down, the timer starts to make another, and you still have the other charge. More on this later. The end goal is to get both of your doppelgangers up, because his base attack, damage, and healing is doubled or tripled from base. You get yourself and 2 clones on an enemy, that 30 damage turns into 90. More importantly, on the healing front, the 40 healing turns into 120. And again, that can be splashed on the ground. And with the 3 clones, A lot of the time, those are coming in at different directions, different angles, different elevations. So splashing is the best route. And I want to stress, just like I did in the Invisible Woman video, you are support first. You are there to keep your team alive. When you do that, the kills come. They do. But when you get all your clones up, you're doing big chunk healing. 120 hit points, 40 from each clone. But even if it's just you and one other clone, that's 80 hit points. And to put that into perspective, 80 healing, that's the same as Invisible Woman getting both hits on her attack, the one that goes out and back. Luna Snow heals 60 from her primary, but she shoots a little bit faster. Mantis is 55 and has healing over time. So just one clone and doing 80 is pretty good, but 2 clones is where you need to be. And one of the better parts about Loki is you can splash that healing, the 80 or 120 to multiple allies. There's more to talk about with that, but next is the Regeneration Domain. The second source of his healing, well, it's kind of healing. Your shift and its top left bumper on controller. Use rune stones to create a magical field that provides allies healing and converts incoming damage into further healing. One of the most powerful abilities in the game, marked by a cooldown of 25 seconds, so when you use it, it's to make plays. When you cast it, it also goes to all of your clones. It's on the ground for 5 seconds. It's got a 5-meter radius with 2 meters of height to that. There's only 2 ways this thing can get off the field. 1, the 5-second duration runs out, or 2, the runestone is destroyed. The runestone has 100 health. If they destroy it, it goes away. It's not that hard to do, but they have to take the time to destroy it. And by that time, the runestone did its job. Allies within the field receive healing over time. That's 100 hit points a second, so 500 total over the duration of the ability. And any damage taken is converted into healing based on the amount of damage taken. It's got a 30% conversion rate. So not only are you and your allies getting 100 health a second, but all damage you take is being converted into health. It can counter ultimates, it can stall, it can clutch to keep allies alive. It's one of the best anti-dive tools in the game. Iron Fist, Spider-Man, Black Panther. Usually they're coming in with combos, and once their cooldowns are all used up, they usually dip. Loki is very hard to dive, especially if you know what you're doing with Loki. You've been seeing it in various clips. When the runestone's down, you have to take out the runestone, and by that time, they're kind of out. This is one of the best things about being Loki in these runestones. And the same goes for your other supports. If they're getting dove, you can throw a runestone on them. And again, we're building a foundation, seeing how things work. There's still a lot of strategy to talk about, but these 2 abilities are the main sources of Loki's healing, and one of them is technically more so damage mitigation than healing, those runestones, blocking incoming damage. And when we start getting into him versus other strategists, his numbers are fine. A lot of people say, oh, end of match, Luna Snow has 30,000 healing, Loki has 21. He's going to be lower, because think about this. A lot of supports have healing over time or very potent sustained healing with their ultimates, like Luna, Mantis, Invisible Woman. And all of this is shown in a vacuum, just to show you. Like this Luna ult on these 2 bots. I got 1,250 healing for these 2 guys. Now, imagine your 5 other teammates are in there. This ult lasts for 12 seconds. You got a Groot that has 100 health. You get him to 700. You also have 4 other low health DPS in there, because obviously you have 4 DPS, and you're healing them all. Just constantly healing them over 12 seconds, and you can see how numbers can get very high very quick for most strategists on top of the regular healing. But a key difference is the chunk that Loki does. Like a great example is Mantis. Love Mantis. For healing, Flower heals for 55 on the initial heal, then 20 hit points a second for 8 seconds. So in this bot, they get hit 5 times, I heal them, does the burst 55, the 20 per second. As you can see, the bot never gets fully healthy, but they get sustained healing. And in the end, I get credited with 215 healing. Compared to Loki with 2 clones, don't blink, the bots hit 5 times, I heal them, boom, full health, it's done. I get credited with 120 healing. And if you extrapolate it down the line a little bit, Mantis has 4 of these healing flowers. She throws them on 4 teammates. In the same example, she's got 860 healing right there. Loki, the same 4 bots doing the same thing, 480 healing. Am I trying to say that Loki's better than all of them? No, I'm just trying to explain why his numbers are different. His numbers aren't bad. It's just that Loki's healing is raw healing. His healing isn't really inflated. It's just pure, raw, high chunk healing. And that isn't bad, especially if you're able to hit 2-3 teammates at a time that are fighting on the front line. With what we've learned up to this point, these 2 abilities are the bread and butter. And before I get into overall strategy and cooldown management with them, as you play Loki more, you're going to add to these 2 things. Your decisions are going to be your own within the moment. And I'm going to have tips as we go because there's multiple clone combinations, but there's 2 main combos you can start with right now, take into games and have success with. Those are the Loki Runway and the Targeted Rune. You will use them all the time. First, the Runway. All it is basically getting you and your 2 clones in a line. And you could be the beginning, middle, or ending Loki for this line. But once the line's up, drop the rune. It is a runway, a long line of basically free movement. Sometimes you need to get into a zone, move a payload, move in a direction. Every time that you spawn, you have all of your cooldowns. So say there's a stalemate in a hallway, in a choke point, you need to go. You can use this. It is free range to move. It's telling your team to move, and your team, when they see this, they will move. Say you need to move a payload or defending a payload. They're getting ready to get to the checkpoint. You can make a runway to it. That way you can defend it. It's one of the best tools in his kit. It's offensive or defensive. It's a simple one, but it's a bread and butter one. Next is the targeted rune. My favorite one. I use it every match multiple times, and you will too. It's one of the most powerful things you can do with Loki. A big team fight's happening, or maybe a tank is about to go down, send a clone onto their location and drop the rune. It is fight changing, it is match changing. You have 30 meters to do this. A tank's a great example. Say they need help. They're low health, critical. Put a clone on them and rune them. You're taking, let's say, a 700 health tank that was at 100. They're healing up, and all damage that they take is being converted to health. And in these moments, it's instant. I said earlier in the ability breakdown, for the enemy, the ones that are fighting your tank, they're focused on your tank, and all of a sudden a rune shows up at their feet. They need to focus the rune down, or as I said earlier, it just stays there for the 5 seconds. Whatever happens, that's fine, because the rune already did its job. It kept them alive. In that instant, the damage that they took is converted to health, and they're getting healing from the rune. It kept them alive. It is very, very good. Or maybe a team fight's happening on a choke point. Spread your clones out, drop the rune. It's a great feeling to do. I love it. And this is a 25-second cooldown. And no matter what, you're saving yourself too, because a rune is going to get dropped at your feet. And a theme of Loki, the plays that Loki makes are plays that only Loki can make. And this is one of them. It's really, really cool. And these are the types of things that don't show up on the stat sheet, ever. It's just pure raw healing. So whether you use this rune to target rune, put it in a particular area to save your team, or an anti-dive. Spider-Man, Black Panther, Iron Fist. Keep yourself alive to keep everything moving along. Great uses of it. So 3 more abilities. First, the Backstab. Melees from behind deal 45 damage instead of 30. If the opportunity presents itself, sure. Not a big part of his kit, but the last 2 coexist and play off the 2 main ones that we've talked about so far. You're going to add them in. So first, Deception. You right-click on controller's left trigger. Cooldown of 15 seconds, Loki leaves an illusion in his place and becomes invisible while continuously healing himself. The invisibility has no time limit. Any action other than casting Devious Exchange, reloading, or casting a Doppelganger will render him visible. So while invisible, you get 20 health per second, and the main way I want you to look at this ability is this is an emergency clone. It's a third clone, because when you use this ability, you leave a clone as you go invisible. And I'm going to tie it all in at the end with the strategy. But aside from that, this invisibility, one, it's a great way to disengage. Say you're overwhelmed, you lose a team fight, go invisible, fight another day. Maybe the other support's down, you need health, take a breather, get your health back by doing this, wait for your team to spawn up. 2, I haven't talked about the ult yet. You know what it is, but going invisible helps you target what you want to take. Like right here, I get into their back line, I'm invisible, just waiting. I choose their Mantis. I then go into the Mantis ult, I end up taking out their Mantis, and we're moving on the payload. Invisibility is a great way to get you in a position and steal the ults that you want. 3, you could be the one to find things like the penny nest. Right here, we had ults that we wanted to use, but the penny nest had to go down. So they sent me. I went invisible, found out where it was, placed a clone by it, shot it, so 2 clones on it, destroyed it. We started getting our ults off going. We won the team fight. We won that match. 4, things like this, and this is a great example. It's end of the game. My team lost the team fight. Last ditch effort, I went invisible. I ended up getting away. Well, no one's left on our team. And this is what I mean that Loki makes plays only Loki can make. I stand in this zone for 40 seconds with the enemy team, just invisible off to the side. 40 seconds. I'm waiting and I'm looking at the capture. As it gets to 99, right before they end the game, I pop 2 clones down, I drop a rune, so I have 5 seconds of immunity basically. I target their Atom Warlock, and that was the 1-2 target, so he can't self-res. I stalled long enough, my Magneto gets there, bubbles me, then the Cloak and Dagger gets there, they ult, we clear him out, we won the round. And we won that round legitimately because of Loki. And that's cool. Next ability is Devious Exchange. 15-second cooldown, swap places with clone. An illusion. This is good to get to high spots. You can send a clone up there, swap to him. It's good to get out of an area if you don't have other abilities. Like let's say you get Dove, you don't have your rune. You can send one far away, swap to him and get away. It's very useful, but both of these, the invisibility and the swapping, it's intertwined with the first 2 abilities that we went over. So now, finally, let's get into the foundation, the core fundamentals of Loki and how to play him. And it was very important to understand everything up to this point, the limitations, the strengths, the weaknesses. He's a very complex hero, near limitless clone positioning, strategy with all that. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't understand how things work, you're going to do poorly. That's why we go through things. And when you get these basics down of what I'm going to ready to talk about, you're going to fill the gaps on your own in moment-to-moment gameplay. You're going to start having good games. Loki is true backline, an overseer, watching the battlefield. And when you play as him, as the true backline, he's 100% about cooldown management. And a decade of playing Destiny has prepared me for this moment. You have two main goals with Loki. One, ultimately, you need 2 clones up. That means you have the 120 healing. It means you deal the max 90 damage to enemies. It means you have clone options to swap to if you need to. It means you can do the runway combo. It means that when you target Rune, you're going to have 3 runes on the ground. And 2, along with these 2 clones up, you need to make sure you always have 1 clone ready to go at all times, 1 in reserve. So how do we do that easily? What do I mean by that? And as I started with, getting his kit going is a lot easier than you think. First of all, on defense, like starting defense, you're getting ready to defend, send both clones out. Put them up high, put them in off angles, because by the time that the match starts, the enemy gets to the choke point, your kit requirements have been met, your foundation. The 2 clones are out, 1 or 2 clones are in reserve. So no problems on defense, starting defense. In your clone placement, they're going to be by you or up high. Wherever they are, they need to be available to hit your front line with healing. They need to have a line of sight on your team. But other than starting defense, the main issue I see with a lot of players and they run into is that they spawn, they run out, they get the 2 clones out, they start going. Couple issues with that. One, mainly you have 0 clones in reserve. And that's a big part of what you want. You kind of need them. And it's going to be 12 seconds before you get 1 back. And that aligns with the second thing. If those clones get taken out quickly, you have 1 or 0 clones on the field and you're waiting on a 12-second cooldown. You can't do the things that you need to do when you do this. So this core foundation of getting them going. Get to your back line, like let's say a start of a match. Everybody's running out. You're going to be the back line. You've established where that is. Wherever the fight's going to happen, drop a clone by you and then go invisible to drop a clone. This leaves you with 1 in reserve. You have 2 clones on the field. Your main goals have been met. You have the 120 healing, you have a clone in reserve. The Doppelganger cooldown is coming back. Your Deception cooldown's coming back. One's on 12, one's on 15. You still have your Rune, you still have another clone. Whenever you get into a fight, this is your start. You're setting up healing. Max healing, 120. And most of the time, since you're true backline, it's okay to use that invisibility clone. Because again, if you get dove, you have the Rune. You're going to have other supports with you. Your team's going to be close by you because you're backline healing. But when you guys push or you need defense, that's when you use that reserve clone. That's when you use the targeted Rune. That's when you put one up in a weird area. That's when you use them. Because you're going to get another clone and another. And there's going to be times where you absolutely need to spend all of your cooldowns. Both clones go down and you Rune. That's fine. That's moment-to-moment gameplay. But your ability to make plays with Loki and heal well is dependent on those 2 core concepts. 2 clones on the ground, 1 in reserve. Now, there is a longer way to get to this without using that invisibility. It's to get out there, drop 1 clone, and use 80 healing, and wait the 12 seconds for the other clone, then drop the other one. That's fine. But dropping a clone, going invisible to drop a clone, as I call it, the emergency clone, works out a lot better because you're true backline. And by the time you would need this ability again, hopefully you guys would have pushed up and you will be able to use it again. But immediately getting those 2 clones up for the 120 healing with 1 in reserve to be able to target Rune is your goal. All the big plays come from that. So keep those 2 things in mind. 2 clones on the field, that way you're doing max healing, 1 in reserve. Because everything that we've talked about up until this point, the damage of 90, 120 healing, the targeted Rune, the runway, all of that is a byproduct of getting this core foundation down. And remember, coming off spawn, like that is your job, healing. So drop a clone, go invisible, 2 clones. Sometimes immediately, you need to do a target Rune right on the front tank. If everyone dies, that's fine. You come off spawn, all your cooldowns are back. On offense, throw 1 on the payload, and that's your surefire way to get value because when you Rune that, the Rune moves with the payload. The team's going to be fighting around the payload. That way, most of the time, they get runed, and your healing's a lot easier splashing because that clone just looks at them and points straight down. Very good focus healing. Getting his cooldown management right is key, and after playing a lot of Loki, I found this is the best way to do that. A lot easier to play. That leads us to God of Mischief, one of the most powerful ults in the game. Shapeshift into a targeted ally or enemy hero, use their abilities, except for their team-up abilities. And in your settings, you can put on double confirmation. I suggest that you do that. It's a really bad feeling when you want a Luna ult and you grab a Spider-Man ult. You're usually going to pick a support ult. One of the strongest things in the game is for Luna to use her ult. That's 12 seconds of basically immunity for your team. Then you steal it, you do it. That's 24 seconds to stall or move things along. Or you saw earlier with the Mantis. Got behind them, went invisible, picked her ult, used it to push our team. You're an overseer. And again, moment to moment, you're choosing what's best for your team. But using a DPS ult isn't a bad thing at all, especially when the enemies that need to be targeted are targeted, like their support. I mean, take a Storm ult, Punisher. Like if you mow down what needs to be mowed down, that's a good use of it, and that's fine. But usually, Mantis, Invisible Woman, Luna is what you're going to take. That way you can keep your support train going. The team-ups with Hela, very strong. When Hela defeats an enemy, if Loki's still alive, you get 50 bonus health. If you're down and Hela gets a final blow, you respawn up. Very, very strong. So in conclusion, Loki is no joke when you understand him and execute. There's an opportunity for big plays that only Loki can make. The things in his kit are game-changing, fight-altering, but it's 100% about cooldown management. If you start throwing things out, you're gonna have a bad time. There's a flow to it. His healing is great because it's pure raw healing. Little to no inflated numbers. We went through that. The plays that you make with the runes, the clones, stealing ults, having the 120 healing are what makes him worth running. And as you play Loki, you start setting up Loki locations, different off angles. But to even get to that moment, you have to have those core fundamentals down. You need to have those two things. When those two things are achieved, your games with Loki are going to be better. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. As always, gather as much information as you can from this guide, other guides, other posts, videos, whatever. Be the best player that you can be. Let's talk about Loki down below and share tips. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.